It's November 2019 when the Australian Securities Investment Commission, ASIC, are notified of the fraudulent use of an individual's Australian financial services licence. These licences are issued by ASIC under strict rules and conditions whereby applicants must prove that they are trustworthy to handle other people's money. And the types of people who get these licences are like financial advisors, planners, stockbrokers, basically professionals who manage clients' money. But unbeknown to everyone at the time, the complaint being made was against one of Australia's worst ever fraudsters. And just 1 year later, a disappearance, complaints about police incompetence, and a body part washing up on a remote beach would give rise to conspiracy theories that still go strong to this day. But before we get into the video, thanks to all the new subscribers and all the lovely comments you're leaving on my videos. I'll be dropping a new video every week. So if you haven't subscribed, get subscribed. And if you have any video recommendations, drop a comment or check out my community tab. Melissa Louise Grimley was born on the 21st of April, 1971. She was the second child to parents Barbara and Ted. She has an older brother, Adam, who's 5 years her senior. The family lived in Lugano, a suburb southwest of Sydney, and they lived a pretty comfortable middle-class life. Ted worked in insurance, while Barbara worked as a receptionist for a physiotherapist. As Melissa hit her teenage years, she would attend Peakhurst High School. This is the same high school that her brother would attend as well. And although Melissa is observed to be exceptionally well organised as a student, I mean handing in her assignments on time, being well prepared for tests, friends would later tell reporters that Melissa was actually a pretty average student. She didn't excel academically, not at all. But she would quite frequently embellish her accomplishments, claiming things like that she was in advanced mathematics, which wasn't true. Which is kind of surprising considering where she ends up in life later on. It would be during these high school years where Melissa really does try to fit in and impress girls from wealthy families. People would say she always wanted to fit in with the quote-unquote cool group. To her, I guess the modest middle-class life that she was being raised in wasn't what she wanted. So she surrounded herself with girls from families in the upper echelons of society. After high school, Melissa would attend St. Patrick's Business College, where she studies to be a receptionist just like her mother. Now, this college is an interesting place because it specialised in equipping students not only with the education to work in business, but the etiquette too as well. So it also taught its students how to conduct themselves in a formal setting. And at this point, Melissa is still living at home with her parents. But you could say that she most certainly had aspirations. Her brother Adam at this point, he had graduated university, he was studying to be a chemist, and he was excelling professionally. So she's watching from the sidelines her brother's accomplishments as he mingles with doctors and other uber top tier professionals. She lands her first job at the NRMA, which is an insurance company here in Australia. It would be at this same time that she would meet a man. This is her first boyfriend. He's a few years her senior, and she meets him at a Friday night drinks. The pair starts dating, but things turned pretty bad pretty quickly. He would stay with her at her parents' house in Lugano from time to time, but when he left, Melissa's parents noticed that valuables from the house started to go missing. And this would go on for some time before Melissa's parents, Ted and Barbara, actually confronted Melissa about it, but she wouldn't even hear about it. She wanted none of it. She believed her boyfriend was not doing this. So Ted would go on and hire a private investigator to look into the background of this guy, and oh boy, didn't they find some dirt. As it turned out, her boyfriend had a very long history of stealing and ripping off women that he had previously dated. This guy had left a trail of destruction everywhere he went. So Melissa's parents confront her with this overwhelming proof, but Melissa still denies it. In fact, she ends up leaving the family home and running off with this guy. Several months would go by before Melissa turns up on her parents' doorstep. She is absolutely heartbroken. her boyfriend had drained her financially, racking up a lot of money on credit card debt in her name before he just bounced. He left her. Now she's back living at home with this debt just floating over her head when she gets thrown a bit of a lifeline. A friend that she worked with at the NRMA, she had lined her up with this really good job running this small office for an investment firm. So it's 1998 and Melissa starts working at this investment firm, and it's only her and her boss in this office. So this is like a one-man band. This is a tiny operation, but it is a successful little business. And even though that was the case, that it was only Melissa and her boss working in this office, Melissa still turned up every day with her hair done nicely, her nails done nicely. She was wearing a business suit. Like, she really dressed for the job she wanted, not the current one she was in, because really all she was doing was answering phones and filing paperwork, which you can definitely attribute this professionalism for her appearance to what she learned at St. Patrick's Business School, for sure. You can most certainly attribute it to that. But things would come to a head just 6 months later when her boss discovered that Melissa had in fact been forging his signatures, and she had stolen over $2,000 of company funds. So he calls her into the office, confronts her with these forged checks, to which she didn't deny it, but she also didn't admit to it. And he basically told her, he said, "You leave now or I'm calling the police and you will be charged." So she just gets her stuff and she goes. After this, Melissa decides that a change is on the menu. So she starts attending a gym where she gets a personal trainer. She wants to get in shape. She wants to lose weight and she wants to get in shape. Now, it would be through her personal trainer when the now 27-year-old Melissa would be put in contact with another one of his clients. Now, this client was a financial advisor, and as luck would have it, he needed a new office worker. And it would also be around this time that Melissa meets a new man and she starts this relationship with this Englishman named Anthony Caddick. So big changes are happening for Melissa, and it's all very positive. It's all moving in an upwards direction. So Melissa takes this new job at Wise Financial Services, where she is trained up to be the new office manager. So she's running the office. And just 1 year later, she marries Anthony. So Melissa now becomes Melissa Caddick. In her new job at Wise Financial, she is doing amazingly. She is very efficient, very organized, and she's a standout, to the point that her boss approaches her with a new position. He trains her to become a financial planner. So she is moving up the ladder. And Melissa, she believes wholeheartedly in this company, so much so that she borrows $750,000 and she buys shares in the company, which gives her a 25% stake in this company. So she's basically a partner. And she is kicking goals. In 2004, she would be featured on the cover of several magazines for financial stuff. She's like the golden girl of the financial sector at this point. She even famously talks about how people can not fall for pyramid schemes. It's at this point that Melissa and her husband, Anthony, they have purchased a $1 million terraced house in the expensive upmarket inner city suburb of Paddington. This is a really expensive area, which makes the people that know them wonder how they've been able to afford all of this, given the fact that Melissa's on salary and her husband, Anthony, he is studying at this point, but he's working a pretty average job. But as quickly as things are moving up for the couple, they're all about to come crashing down. That same year in 2004, when she's getting all these accolades, she ends up selling her stake in the company and leaving. You see, Melissa started butting heads with the other partners within this company because Melissa wanted to expand out a little bit more and broaden the financial options for potential clients. She wanted to start recommending property and standalone shares. Now, this company only ever recommended investment funds, which is a whole bunch of shares from different companies packaged into a fund that they would tell people to go and invest in that. And it's considered a very safe investment because it's offset with other companies. So if one company starts failing and another one is going up, then it sort of offsets it so people aren't losing money. If you go and invest all your money in this one company and that company goes bust, well, you lose all your money. So they did not want to go down that road. And they told Melissa this, which she did not want to take on board. She was very firm that this is the direction we should be moving in. And they ended up voting against it. She ends up getting the shits and she ends up leaving. And it wasn't like it was like an easy decision for her to make, because she was very distraught over this whole debacle. She even tells friends how she is done with this industry. She's moving on. She's not sure what she will do at this point, but after all that bullshit, she's done with financial planning, so she says. Now, while all of this is going on, her rise through Wise Financial, her marriage and the purchase of this very expensive home, and then, of course, her leaving, people that knew her and knew the couple noticed how Melissa loved to steal. Like, they'd be out at a very expensive restaurant and she'd just pocket the salt and pepper shakers, or if she liked the cutlery, she'd take the knives and forks. Real petty type stuff. And they would later learn that her uber successful brother Adam, who by this stage was working in Singapore, he was a partner in a large chemical and energy company called Accenture. Anyway, he had helped them out financially by helping them purchase this Paddington property. So she's actually relying on her family to, I guess, live this expensive lifestyle. By 2006, Melissa's husband Anthony, he qualifies as a lawyer, and he has taken a really good high-paying job in the city. You see, Anthony, even though when Melissa met him, he was a backpacking pom, he was actually a very intelligent guy. You see, in the UK, he had studied political science before he came and travelled to Australia. Now, Melissa obviously saw potential in him because it was her, she was the reason, she was the driving force that got him to study law in the first place. And a few months later, after Anthony takes this really good high-paying job in the city, Melissa gives birth to a baby boy. So the couple now have a child. With a newborn baby and a hubby at work in the office, Melissa joins some mothers groups that meet up in the park in the city. It's a way to socialise with other parents and get out of the house. It's while at these meetups with the other mothers, the other parents there, that they notice that Melissa never talks about her husband Anthony. In amongst all the chit-chat about this and that, the only personal thing she really talks about is how perfect her son is, really. That's the only thing she really talks about, is how great he is as a baby. And although the other mothers would talk about like how tired they are, and sometimes they'd look sort of, you know, a little stressed, Melissa never did that. Melissa never talked about how tired she was. She always looked really good. Her hair was always done, her nails were always done. Like she just seemed to breeze through all of this. By 2009, Melissa and Anthony sell the Paddington terraced home, and they actually buy a $1.4 million property in Kensington. This is another bougie inner city suburb. These are like super expensive areas. I can't stress that enough. Like, these people live in the city, in Sydney. But it would be by 2011, the family of three would decide to pack up and move to the UK. I guess they wanted a bit of a change of scenery because Anthony had landed a really good job back in the UK, so they're off. The couple moved to Essex, where Anthony would take the hour-long commute into London every day. Essex, I'm pretty certain Rock and Rod Stewart lives in Essex. Yep, I was right. Now, since the move, Melissa she didn't work, and she became really bored and I guess lonely because Anthony wasn't home a lot. So she tells her husband that she really needs to brush up on her financial skills because she's going to make a comeback. And in order to do that, there's this conference she wants to attend in Switzerland. So he's like, sure, if that's what's going to make you happy, go and check out this conference in Switzerland. And he supports her 100%. But it would be over the next few months when things would take a pretty extreme turn. Melissa had been spending a lot of time in Europe, going to these conferences, when a friend of Anthony's actually spots her in Paris. She's at this cafe with another man, and let's just say they looked like they were more than friends. Now, this sets Anthony off to start tracking the financial records, and he notices that Melissa has been spending large sums of money. So when she returns to Essex, he actually goes through her phone without her knowing, and he discovers all these WhatsApp messages. His wife had been talking to this man named Anthony Koletti, and it had become pretty apparent that Mr. Koletti here and his wife, Melissa, were having an affair. In fact, as it turned out, Melissa had been using their money to fly Anthony Koletti from Australia to Europe and travel around with him, because he would find out that this Mr. Koletti was actually her hairdresser when they lived back in Sydney. So this affair must have been going on for some time. So Anthony gets into this massive argument with Melissa, and he leaves the family home and he goes and stays with his parents. And he's only there for a couple of days before he returns back to the Essex home. Upon his return, he discovers that Melissa had cleaned out the house and their joint bank account, and she had fled back to Sydney, Australia with their son. So they'd only been living in the UK not even 18 months at that stage, and now they are done. And Anthony, at this point, had become partner in the law firm he worked for that specialised in corporate law. Now, for those of you who don't know, corporate lawyers make the big bucks. They're like the NBA players of the legal system, I guess. They're at the top. So Anthony gets a transfer to the Sydney office back in Australia because he wants to be close to his son. Meanwhile, Melissa had shacked up with this new Anthony, the hairdresser and aspiring DJ, in the couple's Kensington house. You see, they had never sold it. I mean, this is the kind of money they have. They just kept that Kensington house. Maybe they rented it out. I don't know. But Melissa is now living there with old Anthony's son and with this new Anthony. So Melissa and old Anthony get divorced a year later, and Melissa gets the $1.5 million Kensington house. And this entire time, Melissa is being super difficult as to when old Anthony can actually see his son. Like, she changes a number multiple times and doesn't tell him. Like, she's giving him the runaround big time. She makes his life a living hell when it comes to just wanting to see his son. And I'm actually guessing the reason she probably cleaned up so much in the divorce settlement was because old Anthony just gave her everything in hopes that that would appease her and she would just allow him more access to his son, which I don't think she did. Plus, she would have been making a mozza on child support because of the job that he had, because of the amount of money that he was making. By 2013, Melissa marries new Anthony and sells the Kensington house for a tickle under $1.7 million. So she's well and truly cashed up at this stage. And by now too, Melissa had actually gotten back into the financial game, and she had started her own company called Maliva. And Maliva was a one-woman operation. She's essentially invests in the stock market, and she's actively trying to gain clients, but she only really offers her services to people she knows. And as luck would have it, her first client was actually an old school friend of hers. Now, this woman entrusted Melissa with her superannuation, which was a few $100,000. And by this stage, she was a single mother and she was working in disability. So she's not a wealthy woman, but she can see that Melissa herself has done very, very well. So she hands over her superannuation to Melissa to invest with her company, Maliva. Now, the next clients Melissa would get would be actually through her brother, two surgeons from Perth that he knew, and they had money to burn. They sent her millions of dollars to invest for them. Now, things for Melissa start going her way yet again. Like, she's moving up and up and up. She's killing it. So much so that she buys a mansion in Dover Heights, a wealthy suburb in the eastern suburbs, and she buys this place for 6 million smackaroonies. And her business from there is just growing and growing and growing. And it's not like she's advertising. It's largely by word of mouth. It's like people that know her, clients that know her. She will take on some clients and knock others back. She'd just say, sorry, my books are full. So she's like really working for herself at this point. She's like working out of the spare bedroom in her Dover Heights mansion. Oh, the dream. And her clients are like super impressed. They get a copy of their investment statements on the regular, and it shows that their portfolios are all growing. And on top of this, they're also getting money in dividend payouts, because some companies, when you invest in their shares, they actually pay dividends every year. So they're actually getting money back on their investment, plus they're watching it grow. So some of her clients are raking it in, but most of them, they'll just reinvest that money. So they're investing more and more and more into Melissa and Maliva. Maliva.
Ah, my liver! My liver!
By this stage, Melissa's clients are only family and friends of friends. And friends of family. Family friends. She's really only interested in working with clients that she wants to. Like, she's her own woman. And if you want to invest with her, don't come to her with just a couple of grand. No, you go big or you go home. She's that for real. So over the years, she builds a client list of over 70 people. And some of these people are like old neighbors that watched her grow up. Other people had seen her success and they really wanted to emulate that for themselves. So she's getting people to invest their retirement funds, or if they've just got spare money laying around. She's living in the eastern suburbs, so some of these people are multi-millionaires, and they can fork out millions of dollars to someone like her to invest for them. Now, Melissa and her family, they go on at least 2 expensive overseas holidays every single year. So people see her living this dream, and I guess that was the allure of it, because they wanted to live like her, because she would go to places like New York, LA, Paris. She would go on these very expensive shopping sprees. And we're not talking Nike and Reebok. We're talking designer, baby. Melissa and her husband have expensive cars. I mean, she buys Anthony, new Anthony, a $400,000 Audi. And Melissa, by this stage, she's got a closet full of designer clothes, shoes, and handbags. Every girl's dream. Her mansion is adorned with fine art, a rare piece that she grabbed from this exotic location. I mean, things couldn't be better, right? But everything would start to unravel in mid-2019. Melissa had some more wealthy surgeons in Perth that, I guess, more contacts through her brother, and these people were looking to invest with her. And it was one of the wives of this surgeon, when Melissa actually sent over the details about her little business there, that the wife, the eagle-eyed wife, she checked the licensing number that Melissa had handed over claiming was hers, and what comes back is shocking. The number, the licensing number, the Australian Financial Services license, remember you need one, this is issued to professionals by ASIC. Well, that license number was actually connected to a woman named Jennifer Porter, not Melissa Caddick. And she totally kept her old Anthony's husband's last name. Nothing sus about that. I mean, why isn't she Melissa Koletti? Mr. Cartel. Maybe she just didn't want a different name or son. I don't know. But it's an odd thing. Why didn't she change her name again? So this surgeon's wife, she actually contacts Jen, the woman whose license number this actually is. And she says, hey, you don't know me, but there's this woman named Melissa Caddick who's been using your financial services license number. Now, Jen knew Melissa years ago because they both worked at Wise Financial Services back in early 2000. So she is pissed about this because this is a huge violation. This is a huge breach. So she reports Melissa to ASIC, not once, but twice. I'm guessing because, I don't know, ASIC didn't get back to her. But by January 2020, Melissa and the family are on a skiing trip in Aspen, Colorado in the United States. And it's here that they run into a friend from the eastern suburbs. Like, this is where all the rich people go, man. Now, unbeknown to Melissa, it would be these next interactions, these next chain of events, one could say, that would lead to her whole life being turned upside down on its head. This friend of hers, she already invests with Melissa, but she's there with another friend that Melissa doesn't know, and this woman is extremely wealthy. And her name is Dominique Ogliv. Melissa and Dom, they sit down for a coffee at a cafe that overlooks the skiing slopes. And they're there to discuss financial stuff. And Dom, she is very taken aback by how, I guess, relaxed Melissa is, because Mel basically tells her, like, look, my books are full at the moment, but, you know, this is sort of what I do, and if something opens up, well, I'll let you know. Which is totally, like, unusual for people that work in finance because they're always looking for new clientele, right? So this is a strange one, but, you know, Dominique is like, oh, cool, she must be the real deal. So the trip comes to an end and all parties, they return back to Sydney, Australia. Now, a month or so later, Melissa actually reaches out to Dominique, and Dominique is in luck because a spot has opened up. So she can now invest with Maliva, Melissa's company. So Dominique sends over $1 million straight away. I mean, she is not playing games. She just sends $1 million. And within like a month or so, Dominique's portfolio starts to grow. In fact, like, you know, she's starting to make money straight away. So Dominique, super impressed with this, sends over another $1.5 million. So Dominique now has invested $2.5 million with Melissa and Maliva. By August that year, and I guess this is where fate comes into play. Dominique is at a dentist in the eastern suburbs, and while she's there, she's sitting in the waiting room, and there's this woman sitting next to her, and they start up a conversation, and as it turns out, the woman sitting next to Dominique is a financial advisor. And I'm guessing the woman tells her that because she is in the eastern suburbs. So it's like, you can maybe attract more clientele. It's like, yeah, I'm a financial advisor. But Dominique already has one. And she's super impressed with a financial advisor. And she tells the lady, she's like, well, my financial advisor is making me a lot of money already. Her name's Melissa Caddick. Have you ever heard of her? Now, the woman Dominique is talking to, her face just drops, because her name is Jennifer Porter, and she knows Melissa all too well. In fact, she's already been fraudulently using her credentials. But before Jen can get a word out, before she can get her thoughts together, Dominique is actually called in for an appointment. So Jen ends up leaving her contact details with the front desk for when Dominique comes out, and she says, oh, can you give this to the lady when she comes out? And Dominique does give her a call, and they meet the very next day. So the two women are sitting down for a chai latte in a cafe in Bondi when Dominique produces the financial reports that Melissa had given her about her investments. Now, Jen looks at them and notices that the account number is only 6 digits long. It's actually 2 digits short of the 8 that it's supposed to be on a CommBank statement. So straight away, Jennifer Porter, is suspecting that the documentation is fraudulent. Remember, she's already caught Melissa Caddick using her licensing credentials. Now she's seeing a financial report. To cut a long story short, Jen is basically pretty certain that Melissa is running a pyramid scheme. So shocked with this new development, Dominique actually reaches out to Melissa the very next day, and she comes up with a classic ruse. She says, I need to get my $2.5 million back because I want to buy a property. Now, Melissa does try to talk her out of it, but Dom is pretty, steadfast that she needs that money back. So Melissa gives her the $2.5 million back plus $380,000 in profit, which I'm guessing she did because she was hoping Dominique might come back later on and invest with her, or at least send like her rich buddies over. But instead of that, Dominique would contact ASIC herself and tell them of the fraud that Melissa Caddick was running, and this would spark a federal police investigation. The investigation would be led by ASIC team member Isabel Allen. They would start digging through the banking records of Melissa Caddick, and what they would find is pretty disturbing. By this stage, almost $30 million of investor money had landed in her account, but it never left for any of these individual accounts she claimed she had made for these investors. They did notice that she had transferred pennies on the dollar to these investors under the guise of dividends, I guess. But the bulk of that money went to maintaining her expensive lifestyle. So her accounts were swiftly frozen, which meant she couldn't access any more money. It's 6:07 a.m. in the morning on the 11th of November 2020. Federal agent Amelia Griffin would knock on the front door of the 5 Willandra Road, Dover Heights mansion owned by Melissa Caddick. When Melissa opened the door to the agent holding a search warrant, she has the look of embarrassment and shock on her face at the same time. The team of almost 20 agents would search the 2 luxury cars owned by Melissa and New Anthony before waiting outside until her son was whisked off to his private school by New Anthony. And they did this because they didn't want to startle Melissa's son. Like, he's only 14 years old, so they just patiently waited outside for them to get him out of the house. Now, this search would take 14 hours, and they would confiscate all of Melissa's luxury designer clothing, her handbags, her shoes, as well as a passport. The property had a working CCTV camera in it, but when the agents asked them for the password, they claimed that they didn't remember it, so the feds just had to take the internal hard drive, which becomes a bit of an issue later on. So the officers would leave with her computers and a copy of the data on her phone. And Melissa would be given a summons to attend court just 2 days later on Friday the 13th. Now, this is where the story gets a little confusing and has given rise to, I guess, conspiracy theories by online web sleuths, so bear with me. What is known, well, kind of what is known, I guess, is that when the officers had left, Melissa to her son and New Anthony seemed pretty unfazed about the entire interaction with the feds. She would contact a lawyer because she did need legal representation in 2 days for her court appearance, so she did that and she arranged an appointment for the next day. Melissa and New Anthony would go to bed roughly at 9:30 p.m, but before doing so, Melissa would open her son's bedroom door, wishing him a good night, telling him that she loved him before closing it and going off to bed. Now, the next day, Melissa's son says that he sees his mother at 5:30 a.m. in the kitchen dressed in running gear. She's about to leave the house. Now, it's presumed that she is leaving the house to go for a jog, and she leaves at 5:30 a.m. New Anthony confirms that he hears the door close. On the kitchen table is Melissa's phone and her keys to the house. And it's from here she disappears. New Anthony would be seen on a property CCTV camera streets away, getting into his car at 6:55 a.m. So this is nearly an hour and a half after they claim that Melissa had left the house. Now, remember, their house's CCTV footage camera wasn't working because the feds had taken the internal hard drive, so it just wasn't recording. So they can't confirm this through CCTV footage. So they're really just going off circumstantial evidence, and the best of it is coming from her son's recollection because New Anthony's a dick. Later that night, New Anthony would call one of Melissa's relatives about what had happened the day during the police raid, but he would tell them that Melissa was upstairs sound asleep, which wasn't true. By Friday, New Anthony attends the local police station and notifies them that his wife is missing, and he files a missing persons report. During the course of the missing persons investigation, New Anthony gives conflicting statements. 1 minute he would tell them that the couple went to bed at 9:30 p.m. The next he would say that, he stayed up all night. And then he would say that, the last time I seen her, she was sound asleep at 4 a.m. And then he would say he didn't see her at all. And then he would say that he heard the door shut at 5:30 a.m. So police at this point are forced to canvass the entire area around the home, obtaining CCTV footage from neighbouring properties because New Anthony is being so unreliable, they need to try and determine, first and foremost, what time she left the house, and New Anthony is just not getting the job done. And you think he would want to, right? And the only footage they really get is of New Anthony the morning of a disappearance getting into his car. That's the 6:55 a.m. footage. Now, this really could just be because the house's cameras weren't positioned to pick up people walking by, because most house cameras are really just watching the front door. They're not really looking up and down the street. So they may have just missed her, which I'm guessing, in my opinion, that's more than likely what happened. But nonetheless, nobody picked up her walking past. Now, New Anthony would actually tell the police to canvass the area around the cliff face, just down the road from where they live, because he feared that she may have jumped off. But when the police asked him if he'd been out looking for her, she said no, which was proven to be a lie because Melissa's son would tell the police that New Anthony had been out 3 times the day before looking for her. And one of them was that in the morning, an hour and a half after she'd gone, allegedly left the house. So he'd gone out 3 times that day looking for Melissa. But he tells the cops that no, he never left the house. So police at this stage suspect that new Anthony knows a lot more than he is willing to say. The mystery of the missing con woman with the loot of $30 million gripped the media here in Australia. The coronial inquest would even mention it, quote, "There was a multitude of reported sightings and a host of theories as to what happened to her. These range from the credible to the frankly bizarre." But as the mystery gripped the country, a grisly discovery would be made at Bondi Beach, some 5 hours away on the New South Wales south coast on the 21st of February 2021, so this is 3 months later. A black and white ASIC shoe was found washed up on a remote beach, and inside that shoe was a human foot. When the police were called, forensic investigators noted that the foot inside the shoe had almost been worn down to the bone. All the top parts of the flesh were so badly decomposed. The foot had noticeable breaks in the toes, and the little bit of the ankle that was still there looked like it had been snapped off by blunt force trauma, so nothing like a cutting blade or anything. But experts couldn't determine whether or not that was 100% accurate due to the decomposition. So they don't really know how this foot, I guess, detached from her body. Straight away, this foot is suspected to be Melissa Caddick's. So her parents would be swabbed for DNA, and this would confirm that the foot did belong to Melissa Caddick. Marine experts would be called in to examine the remains, and the overall conclusion that they came to was that they believe her body had entered the water sometime after she had reportedly last been seen. Her body was submerged at the bottom of the ocean, and during this time it is believed that her body was ravaged by sharks, all the while tossing and tumbling at the bottom of the ocean and going with the undercurrents and being pushed south. You see, with the Amy Bradley case, sometimes bodies just don't come back to the surface. At some point in early February, her foot separated, and due to the buoyancy of this ASIC sneaker, it basically come to the surface and it drifted in open water, moving with the currents. And the reason they believe this is due to the small barnacles that were discovered on the sides of the soles of her shoe. And these barnacles are called goose barnacles, and they commonly attach themselves to drifting material out in the ocean. And given the age of these barnacles, it was estimated that they were only between 40 and 53 hours old. When the shoe washed up on shore several weeks later, they would die. So given the age of the barnacles, that narrowed down the length of time the shoe was floating out at sea. And given the death of the barnacles, which are these little sea creatures, that narrowed down the amount of time the shoe had been washed up on the beach. So they estimated the shoe was on the beach for less than a week before it was discovered, and they estimated that the shoe was floating on top of the water for about 2 to 3 weeks. So although nobody can confirm exactly when or where Melissa Caddick had died, or how she even died at this point, I guess deductive reasoning would tell you that the morning she left the house at 5:30 a.m., the day after the ASIC had done the raid on her, she walked down just a few minutes down the road to the Dover Heights lookout and she threw herself off. Deductive reasoning would tell you that. And given the damage that would have occurred to her body by the rocks below, when her body slipped into the water, it just sank to the bottom, and then eventually sharks fed on it. A psychologist would do an examination of Melissa's medical records, and she came to the overwhelming conclusion that Melissa Caddick was a narcissist. She didn't care who she hurt. She only cared about keeping up this appearance of wealth and having this status. And the day of the raid, it is suspected that Melissa Caddick suffered a narcissistic injury. Like, she knew that she was going to be outed as a huge fraudster, and she decided the next day to just... And given that fact that it is believed that Melissa Caddick is a diagnosed narcissist, new Anthony probably suffered from narcissistic abuse, and that may give reason as to why he acted the way he did with all the lies. Maybe he was just too scared to say anything, but I suspect he knew. I suspect he knew that she might end it all. I think something was said the night before. I think she said something the night before, and he that's why he was out the next day looking for her. Like, you know. In the aftermath of her death, conspiracy theorists believed that she was living in Bali under a new name. Or potentially she had been topped by people she was working with, or knew Anthony did it. But the truth is, Melissa Caddick spent the money on expensive holidays, designer things, and living the high life. She didn't save any of the money. If you actually read the court documents, a lawyer from Christian Dior, the designer, they even responded to the lawsuits afterwards because the feds wanted more information about the stuff she'd bought through them, but they said no, like, we're not going to give you any of that information because it's like infringes on our proprietary stuff, I guess. I don't know. But she spent big. I mean, she even dropped 14 grand on designer running shoes for her son. And the police did do a huge investigation in the tracking as much of the money as they could. I think they did pretty well at it. All her assets and the proceeds of her crimes would be sold off, and duped investors would gain roughly 30 cents on the dollar of what they had invested with her. So that was after everything was sold. And remember, like, secondhand goods usually don't sell for the same amount of price you paid for them brand new. So that tells me that she really did just spend that money. Knew Anthony would struggle financially in the years after. He appeared in an interview for the news. He was actually paid $150,000 to go on this program, and he basically just lied. Again, like, this dude never tells the truth. I mean, I'm like the one speculating as to whether or not he suffered from narcissistic abuse. Everybody else just thinks he's really dumb. But, you know, because people look at it and like, oh, she bought him a $400,000 Audi and all these clothes, but that's also another way of controlling somebody. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't mean you really love them. And there was also, during the lockdowns, she made him quit being a hairdresser and made him stay home. And she used the pandemic sort of as like her excuse, which a lot of people did that. I don't know. And although I do think his actions are super suspicious, I highly doubt he had anything to do with her disappearance. Because from all reports, again, like, people are saying this guy is like a dumbass. Like, he knew absolutely nothing about what his wife was doing. Like, she totally wore the pants. Like, you know, he's just like, just going along. And if you look at him, you can kind of see that. Like, this is like a conclusion I would come to. And I mean, could you like imagine a dumbass like him who contradicts himself literally in the next sentence, having the wherewithal, I guess the expertise to pull off a murder like that, and then somehow dump her body without being seen by any of the cameras and expertly clean the crime scene, because they did luminol testing inside the house and the vehicles and they found nothing. So, man, he's good. Like, you know, if he was able to do that, but yet he contradicts himself and he's a dumbass, like, maybe it's like that movie, The Usual Suspects, where his foot straightens up at the end and he just walks off and slicks his hair back.
My guess is you'll never hear from him again.
Or the other conspiracy theory is that she's living in Bali as a peg leg under a new name. So if essentially someone had chopped off her foot, they had made it look like blunt force trauma, so not a sharp cutting tool, and then they've somehow attached barnacles to the shoe to make it resemble like it had been floating out in the ocean for weeks, and then they drop it off on this random, very isolated beach, very far south, so hundreds of kilometres away from where she actually went missing, in the hope some random would find it. That's the conspiracy theory. That's a pretty elaborate one. There's a lot of moving pieces there. I mean, the police even looked into that one. They even asked people that made prosthetic feet and stuff, and they were like, did a woman matching this description ever come in here and ask you to make her a foot? And they're like, no. But experts were like, you know, even if that was the case, like, to perform a surgery like that, cutting off a foot, like, if you didn't die from the blood loss, more than likely infection would get you. And you're not very mobile after an operation like that. Like, they definitely know it was her foot. Like, there's no, like, they're not even debating that. I mean, they really looked into these conspiracy theories during the coronal inquest. It's crazy. But overall, she hasn't contacted her son since the day she left the house, which is probably the only person she ever really gave a shit about. So that tells everybody that, yeah, she's gone, man. She's dead. But today, new Anthony works as an Uber driver, a part-time hairdresser, and a DJ. And he was recently charged with assaulting a 73-year-old woman. The old woman was okay, but why? And Melissa's son, apparently he's at university now. So that's the story of one of Australia's greatest con artists and spenders. She loved a good shop, bought heaps of shit, but she died at 49. So is it worth it? Is it worth trying to impress others with wealth and status? Is it worth living like a king, or a queen in this case, until the age of 49 before you have to jump to your death and you get smashed on the rocks beneath you and then you get eaten by sharks? Is it worth it? I'd say no. I'd rather be happy with nothing. It's like my channel. Like, you don't really see me jump on trends, which I know is beneficial to this channel. Like if I jumped on trending cases, but I only talk about stories that I'm passionate about, things that I'm interested in, and things that I think we can all learn from. But I'm like also not against selfish people. You know, I think we all need a level of selfishness so we don't get taken advantage of and that we live the life that we truly want. But I'm also a firm believer in doing things without expecting things in return. Do them because you want to. It's like I work a job that I enjoy. It pays pretty well, but I'm happy doing it and I don't need much, and that also makes me happy. Stop wanting things and don't live your life to the expectations of other people, because that's what I really see when I look at Melissa Caddick. I see someone that's not being true to themselves, ripping people off to buy expensive handbags that the average person just looks at and thinks that they're really good knockoffs anyway. It's like, why bother? Just live the life you want. Stop trying to impress others. But if you like the video, like the video. If you didn't, down thumb it. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel. I will be dropping a new video every week. If you have any video recommendations, drop it in the comment or go to the community tab. And as always, look after yourself first and foremost. Put yourself first and you stay safe out there in internet land.